we are actually almost done. This is the last thing that we have to go over, which is the Q&A period, questions and answers. And I know this is what everyone's been waiting for because you have burning questions. And so we will open it up, and I think I will stop sharing my screen so you can see. All righty.
Right. We did get a couple of questions while we were going here, so maybe I will just answer these, since some of them have already been answered. But let's see if I can find these here. Here we go. All right. One of the questions, pretty easy to answer. Will this PowerPoint be sent to folks? Yes, we will send the PowerPoint, and we will also share this webinar video. Are scores based on the application itself or in comparison to other applicants? So scores are based on the application itself. But however, to Sharice's point about using the same criteria, if you are reading a bunch of proposals and you realize that you are using specific things to base your scores on, and you have the RFP as your guide, it has requirements in it, but we all may use our own system to sort of judge what points we would attach. In that sense, you want to make sure that you are consistent across all of the proposals that you score. And so that's what Sharice was talking about in terms of going back and sort of assessing the scores that she was considering for each application. Another question was, does it mean that individual comments could be shared, or do you share aggregated comments? So I think that's in regards to the fact that all comments could be sunshined. And we do share individual comments. It is the case that often folks will ask to see all the comments that have been provided for an individual proposal, but it is the case that we will share them as submitted on an individual level. So those are sunshinable. Now, there are a few other open questions here. So what is the difference between reviewing the proposals and scoring the proposals? Other than the conflict of interest, do you need another piece of information on November 10th? That's a good question. The difference is that what we're asking you to do by the 10th is to complete the conflict of interest prompt, right? So that's the first thing you do, as Mitzi showed. When you access that individual proposal, the first thing you will see is that prompt. Before you even see the responses, you have to actually answer that question there about whether you have a conflict or not. So what we're asking you to do is to complete that prompt, and that is it. You can then go back and complete the rest of your scoring at another time. We just want to have enough time to be able to shift things around and still allow people to have most of the month to continue their scoring. Will there be scoring on the budget portion or just the narrative? So the budget portion is actually not a scored section, but you will have access to it and you can look at it. There are some narrative portions that the applicants will fill out in the budget, but we are not asking you to actually score the budget. And part of that is because there's some nuances to budgets and the way that DCY requires folks to submit things. And so we want to make sure that we're not asking you to do more than you may have the information to be able to do. If individual comments are shared, would they be shared anonymously? So technically, it is the case that reader names can be sunshined. I will tell you that from experience, it is often not requested that folks actually ask for who the readers are. They usually ask for the scores or the comments. But it is true that they can be sunshined, and we of course are in compliance with all sunshine laws, and we will provide that information if requested by anyone who reaches out to us. Another question we have is, after we have read a proposal and scored it, can this be saved before submitting? That's an excellent question, and actually maybe I will have Mitzi answer that one.
Yes, proposals can be saved, or your proposal scores, your comments, anything that you enter in the proposal scoring form can be saved, and you can return to them at a later time when you're ready to submit.
All right, let's see here. We have another one. It was shared that the community needs assessment showed a continuation of the same/similar needs over time. Do the proposals include any information on recent evaluations of CBO programs? That's a good question. There is a question that's in all the strategies that asks about program impact, and it asks about, essentially it asks the applicant to talk about how they use data and information that they gather about their program to determine whether it's effective or not. We're not asking applicants to submit any evaluations or any kind of additional documentation like that, but they may actually use that information throughout the proposal if it's relevant. If they want to talk about how their program has changed or has expanded or in some way has shifted, or if they want to talk about how they sort of use that kind of information generally, those things would potentially show up in the proposal. Yeah. Let's see. How long is the average proposal? Do all of the companies or proposers answer the same questions? Oh, that's a good question as well. So the proposal, as Mitzi stated, has 4 different question sections, and those sections are the same across all proposals. The questions in those sections will vary by strategy. There are some similarities. There are some questions that you'll see across a lot of strategies that are things that we'd want to know for our programs. But they are not super long because we have character limits on all of the questions. I believe it was 1,400 for most of the questions, and then 900, I think, for one of the sections, which I don't know offhand exactly how much that is, but it's not a book. This is not a chance for folks to actually go on and on and on and give you all kinds of information that may or may not be relevant to the proposal. We try to limit it and force them to be as concise as possible. But the questions will vary by the strategy. So if you're applying to the same strategy and you have selected the same target populations, because there are some differences in target population, then you will be answering the same questions. But there are some target populations that trigger additional questions or shifting of questions within the system. And you'll see that there are those differences when you're looking at individual proposals. All right, we have another one here. Sometimes in scoring, you will see a great answer to a question that was asked earlier and maybe not answered as well there. Do you want us to score each response individually, or do you consider the entire proposal in our scoring? Sharice, you want to take a crack at that one?
Sure. No, we want you to answer the question individually. Once again, whatever the question asks, what their response is, that's what you're basing the score on. Now, there is a section where there's a couple of questions that you answer. There's like 3 different questions, and then it's the overall score for all those questions in that section. That's the only time where it's like pretty much cumulative. But it's what they asked, what they said, did they answer it? That's where you're basing your score on, not saying, oh, well, they answered it up here, so I'm gonna give them, no. If they didn't answer it there, they don't get credit there. They need to get credit where they actually answered the question, what the question was asked. And I know that could be difficult at times because you want to read it all, but once again, how we need people just to be clear and concise, and the questions are written to where honestly the responses should be different for each question.
Okay, we have another question. Do applicants have the opportunity to provide additional information as a part of the review process? Actually, they do not. So the proposal basically encapsulates their entire application to us. And so in the proposal, you'll see there are more than just questions. There's also projections. There's a budget that they need to fill out, projections of the number of youth that they're going to serve, and information about those young people. There's actually also information about activities that they're going to be doing with those within their program. So you get a sense of the program actually that's very similar to what we collect from our grantees once they're funded from us, very similar to their program work plan. So it gives you that sense of how they think about the program in terms of their responses, but then also specific information and details about the program. But they do not have the opportunity to come back into the review process at some other time and provide some other additional information. It's all encapsulated in that proposal. How much time would you budget to review each proposal? Well, this may vary per individual. Any general estimate for how long it might take? An hour/proposal or less? Anyone want to take a shot?
I think it depends on you as a reader, how quickly you read and can process information. But I would say roughly because you also need to make comments. So I'll give yourself, maybe 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. But as you read more, it'll get a lot quicker because you'll, if you're reading proposals that are all under YWD General, let's say. Of course, all the questions would be the same depending on the target population they pick, so it'd be a lot quicker. But initially, it might take you between 20 minutes just to read, score, and write your comments, because you're a little bit more careful 20 to 30 minutes as you go. I don't know if someone else could chime in who's read and scored. At some point in time, I can knock them out like 10 minutes or less as they go. But
Yeah, I think it varies. I mean, I think you pick up momentum as you go, especially the more you know, in the beginning, you're still trying to put it all together. You got the proposal, you got the RFP, you're trying to remember the requirements, you might have to go back and check. But as you go along, particularly if you think about trying to score things that are in the same strategy in, you know, together, you know, in some sort of an order like that, you will start to know things, and it's easier for you to assess each proposal, and that might allow you to pick up some time. But I think it's going to take some time to figure that out, and that's why we definitely recommend that you give yourself enough time. Don't wait till that last week and then realize it takes a lot more time, and then, you know, create a stressful situation for yourself. Definitely give yourself enough time. All right, a few more questions coming in. Are they proposing a scope of work that includes target number of participants? And if so, should we review that against what is in their submitted budget? That's a good question. They are going to submit information about a target number of participants, but it is based on what their requested amount of money is. And so, you know, that's information that we're not asking you to correlate the number of participants projected with the budget. That's a role for us to do as we go deeper into our process. But it would make sense for you to take a look at the budget and have a sense of how they're planning to spend those dollars, and whether or not that seems reasonable based on what they write in the responses to the questions. Another question here. I may have missed this. How much weight do our recommendations carry into the final decision-making process, assuming that there will be some checks and balances? That's a good question. So the scoring portion of this process is really about getting a sense of how the proposals stack up individually based on what they've submitted to us. And so that's an important starting place for us. It gives us our initial ranking of where these proposals fall. But in order for us to make funding decisions, there's a lot more context and nuance to it that we actually need to bring in. And that's obviously not information that we would expect you all to know. But that's why we set up these additional layers of the process. And so the deliberation part of the process is where we're really talking about, like, you know, they've said these things. We feel the scores have turned out a certain way around how they're going to do this programming. Do we think that they're going to actually be able to achieve these things based on our understanding of their previous performance, how well we know that they can manage the dollars, whether or not their program like exactly aligns with what we're trying to do or not. And so that is where we start getting into more of the weeds around it. And then we additionally will take it even further when we get to the decision phase and start to look at what is the impact of certain decisions that we might make around services in certain communities, or the amount of a service that's available across the city. So your part in this process is really crucial. It's a crucial starting point, but I wouldn't say that it holds the most weight in the process. I think it holds like an appropriate amount of weight as a way to have a group of outside readers that are potentially less biased than internal DCYF staff to give us that initial ranking. So it's definitely very crucial that we get these scores from you all. But you can also know that we're not expecting you to have all the details that we would need to have in order to fund these programs and have a portfolio that really meets our needs. All right, there are two more questions here. Have any proposers submitted proposals in the past? Can the proposers submit proposals for numerous strategies? Does someone else want to take that one? Sharice, you want to take that one?
Sure. So if the question is asking if people who submitted proposals in the past, if people who submitted proposals currently submitted proposals in the past, yes, most definitely. There are folks who we currently fund that have submitted proposals, as well as folks who we've never funded have submitted proposals. And can the proposers submit proposals for numerous strategies? Yes. So potential proposers were able to select what result area, which service area, and which strategies in which they wanted to provide proposals for and then complete those. So they were able to do that in each result area. There was no limit to the number of service areas or the number of strategies in which they could provide a proposal for. So it was open. And so, yes, we're expecting out of the 720, yes, there's probably some current DCYF grantees that are within that, as well as some new folks that will are new to us that we have not met.
Great. This next one's actually not a question, but I think it makes a good point. And the person wrote, I tend to read through all the applicant responses first before actually scoring. And so that just gives an opportunity to note that you can do that. You can read through, you can actually score them. You could save your results and then not submit until you have read them all. Then you could go back and you can adjust. So if you're the kind of person who feels like you kind of need to get started, and then you might need to kind of come back and recalibrate your scores based on more proposals that you read, we would suggest that you don't submit them. You can go through the scoring process and just save, the key thing being to save. And then you can come back and adjust, and then you can submit them when you're ready to. There are multiple ways to go about doing it, and we encourage you to do it in the way that's most effective for you. But just know that once you submit it, you cannot unlock your scores and change them. All right, and we have a last question. Have grantees found the involvement of external reviewers helpful in general? I don't actually know the answer to that question. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Do we think that they find it helpful?
I don't fully know. I feel like it's 50-50. Some do, especially those who sunshine their proposals and wanted to see the comments to have a better understanding of why they, maybe didn't make it. But that's a great question. Maybe we should survey folks and see if they do find it helpful.
Yeah. One thing I will say, though, is that I think the city of San Francisco definitely appreciates having external readers, because the city has started to, definitely try in all of our various procurements to bring in more sort of outside, directly connected to it, readers and reviewers, just to make sure that we have a fairer process. So I think in that regard, the role that you all play is really crucial. And honestly, with just the volume of proposals that we have, and the amount of time that we have, we really could not do this without you all. So we just greatly appreciate your willingness to serve as a reader. And there is another question. Are you enlisting other readers as a checks and balance and/or in response to the ethical problem which existed in the past? Well, I don't know what the ethical problem is that's being referred to, but I can't say that the city itself has had some issues in some of our programs and officials and things like that. And some of these new rules are in response to some of those things, and they're happening citywide. So as much as they make our processes fairer, more competitive, then I think that's a good thing. And I think in that way, I'm sure our applicants also appreciate having a fair opportunity to actually get these funds.
But just to note that we've always included external readers in our RFP process. So this is nothing new for us. I've been here for the last 16 years, and for the 5 that I've been a part of, we've always had external readers participate in the process. And I'm sure that was also prior to me coming to the department, because we realized there needs to be a checks and balance. To Mijo's point, people are reading it based on, once again, this is what they said, this is what the program model is. We believe they could do this because you all, in the survey that you responded to, did list your expertise or your content expertise areas. And that's where we're hoping to send proposals that match that. So we do take what the readers say, as like Mijo said, you are our first line to let us know, what makes sense. Yes, they're hitting all the questions, the program model, yada, yada, yada is what exactly we're looking for. And so we've always had readers as a checks and balance for us in our process.
Some of you might have been some of those readers in previous
Right.
processes. All right, well, it looks like we have no additional questions, so unless there are any last ones, I think we will wrap up this session. But once again, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. Thank you in advance for this investment of time and energy that you are about to undertake. We know we are asking a lot of you, and we just appreciate all the effort that you're putting into helping us ultimately provide the types of services that we know that our children, youth, and families deserve and need. And so we just really appreciate, everything that you guys are doing for us in this process. And so we also hope to be as supportive as possible. So definitely make sure that you read the resources that we send out. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And in general, we just want to make sure that you have what you need to do your part of this process, and work together with us on it.
We have one more
we have
question.
one last question here. Can you talk about how many people read each proposal? So the minimum is 3, and we are trying to ensure that 2 external readers and 1 staff person are reading every proposal. So that is our goal, and I'm pretty sure we will be able to achieve that with the number of readers that we have and the number of proposals. All right, so that's the last question, and with that, just want to say thank you to everyone once again. And look out for some communication from us coming up, and clear your calendar.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.